All right, we did it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're back. Nathan Holritz here, your host, and we managed to sort through a number of technical difficulties, including my power just randomly shut off. I think we've got some minor storm coming through in the area, and I'm hoping that doesn't happen again during this episode, but my apologies for the delay in going live today with this live stream. Thanks everybody for joining us. Of course, this episode and all episodes are produced by Photographers Edit. Custom editing for your professional photographers, wedding photographers, portrait photographers, and you can go to photographersedit.com to learn more. It is my privilege today to have a brand new guest on the show, and we're actually getting into a really interesting topic. But Kate Storey is here with me today. Kate, thank you so much for kind of working through the tech issues with me. I think we're going to make this happen.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Nathan. I'm excited to be here.
Well, and I was telling you before we start, because I know it's so easy in business, and especially in the photography industry, I guess we all get used to saying certain words and phrases over and over again. One of the things that I noticed a lot on social media, and I'm guilty of it too, and I'm sure I've said it a million times to the podcast, is I'm excited, ... Like that's a phrase that you hear. So excited to announce, so excited to have, and we say these things over and over again, so much so that I think the words begin to lose any sense of significance. And so I told you before we actually went live, I was like, look, I'm genuinely excited about this topic today because I think it's an important one, maybe one that's under discussed. We're specifically going to be talking about how to write better website copy so that we can book clients more effectively. And we're going to get to that topic here in just a second. Let's actually introduce you and your business, your brand to the audience here. And I'm getting to know you as well with everybody else. Talk to us a little bit about the brand position for Book More Brides. What do you all represent, and how does that stand out amidst the marketplace?
Absolutely. Well, yes, my husband Nick and I are the owners of Book More Brides, and we teach marketing and messaging to wedding business owners so they can book more weddings and make more money. At the heart of it, that's everything that we do. We are teachers at heart, and we love showing how to use marketing and sales to your advantage. A lot of very foundational, structural things that need to be in place, but then also some fun things as well to kind of be able to connect in a better way with your clients.
Okay, I'm really impressed actually with the intro part of that. Go back to the first phrase, the summation of the brand position. Do you mind repeating that one more time?
Of course, yeah. No, we teach marketing and messaging to wedding business owners so they can book more weddings and make more money.
Okay.
That's everything.
And that's what I love about that, and we're going to talk more about this today, is the simplicity, number one. I mean, you can say that sentence or that phrase within, 5 seconds or so. Maybe not even that much. And it's also using very practical language. Another thing that we're going to talk about today during the show, because I think a lot of times photographers tend to get creative and cute and trying to be a little bit different and artsy. And so the words that they use, they may mean something to the photography industry. They may mean something to the photographer. But to the everyday individual who doesn't have any context as it relates to the photography industry, they don't necessarily make a lot of sense. So actually having somebody talk to them in normal human language it actually goes a long way. So I love that you're able to do that so concisely. And I'm going to pull up the website here real quick. And we can see here at the top of bookmorebrides.com, everybody listening in, bring in more leads and close more couples. And that's an even more succinct summation of that brand and what it's about: wedding business marketing and sales training, coaching, and done for you services. And one other thing, Kate, too, and I asked you about this before we got started, but you actually have a background in the videography world, is that right?
Yes. Well, truthfully, my main training, and this is why everything works so well with Book More Brides, is my background is in marketing, public relations, and communications. That's how I was kind of formally trained. It's where I spent a lot of my years before I came to the wedding industry.
Okay.
But my husband and I started a wedding videography business, actually a DIY wedding videography business, built off of our own wedding experience. We were not able to hire a videographer for our wedding, and it is honestly one of our biggest regrets. Even now, we've been married, it'll be 18 years this year, and we still wish that we had been able to hire one. So we had just gone to a friend's wedding. We had our brand new iPhones there, which they're getting better and better all the time. And we had just thought to just grab some video because I thought, she's going to want some of this. And afterwards, we're just like, gosh, we wish this would have been possible for us when we got married. So we ended up forming a company that allows people to share for guests, family members to be able to share their video. It's professionally edited and provided for couples who may either want a different style than traditional videography or who may be on a budget and need a more affordable option.
And is that a business that you all are still running?
It is, yes.
What's the name of the website? Excuse me, I'll pull that up.
Sure. It's called Wedio. The website is getwedio, weddeo.com. And that has become it's a passion project for us still. Our main focus now is on Book More Brides. Both my husband and I focus on that full time, but that is where we started in the wedding world, and it is still a passion for me especially because, like I said, it was just one of our biggest regrets. I wish that we would have been able to have something like this available to us that would have made it a little bit easier. Or we've actually had a lot of couples that have come to us that are looking for something different. They appreciate a traditional videography style, but they're looking for something a little different. So we've some of our more fun weddings that we've been able to work with have been a Batman themed one on the top, like in Chicago, very, foggy night, everything very Batman-esque, which was a lot of fun. But we also tend to work with a lot of couples who, maybe like us, were married young. We were 23 and 24 when we got married, and we just didn't have a whole lot of expendable income. So having something like this and still be able to capture those memories, to have the voices and the movements of the people that we love, would have meant so. It means so much to us now, and it would have meant a lot to us to have then. So it's really an honor to be able to do that for other couples as well.
That's cool. That's really, really cool, actually. Okay, so I pulled that up on screen for everybody. Remind everybody of the website, just in case they're curious and they want to look it up themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's getweddeo.com. Get, GETWEDDEO.com.
Okay, cool. Well, I asked that question, though, because I also like to give context to our listeners. Somebody's coming in and presenting an idea, a topic to our listeners on the show. I like the listeners, the photographers listening in, to know context, have context to where is this person coming from? Why do they even have the right to be telling me what I should be doing with my website? Just a little bit of context is always helpful, and you have some experience here in the industry, so I appreciate you sharing that. Let me jump to the next question. Let's talk about customer experience. Another one of the common questions here on the show. What's the big idea behind the customer experience that you are bringing to, I guess at this point it's more about photographers or industry, probably videographers as well, through Book More Brides. What is the central idea behind providing a great customer experience for those clients?
Yeah, absolutely. We do work with wedding professionals of every stripe, venue owners, everybody out there, but photographers do tend to come to us a lot. And regardless of what your offering is, your style, anything like that, understanding your client's emotional needs, which is, what they really want from your photography, that is so key, because I'll tell you, it is so much more than just beautiful photographs or a record of the day. Yeah. Your clients want so much more from you. And so when you can understand that and understand what is the emotional driver behind that, that is what will be the game changer in your business for marketing.
Cool. And we're going to actually get into that. So I'll save any follow-up questions for later in the conversation. Let me jump to the next question then, and that has to do with time management. And you talk about having, married life in and of itself can take up a lot of, shall we say, mental resources, emotional resources, time, obviously, if you want to spend any effort developing a relationship. So when you're juggling family life, and then you're also juggling, in this case, multiple businesses at this point, it can be a bit challenging trying to find some level of balance. And I know that word is kind of a funny thing because it's going to look different for everybody, but what's the big idea behind, I guess, finding a little bit more freedom, more flexibility for yourselves as business owners so you do have some sense of balance?
No, I totally understand that. We also have 4 children, so
we are hands full.
we're a busy bunch over here. Yeah, they range in age from 5 to 14. So we're starting to get into that very, very busy time of life where our oldest is, she's going to high school next year. She's got all sorts of activities, and now we've got a little one who is just restarting the journey here. And so what I have found to be most helpful with everything, whether it's my personal or business, is really having time block set up, which I think is, again, something that people tend to, it's a concept they know about. But where it really clicked for me is that I once heard from an organizing expert that we often overdo the time that we spend in certain areas because we're worried we're not going to be able to do it again later. Like, for example, if you're really focused on, editing, and you're in the flow and everything, and you're like, oh, I've got so much coming up and everything. I'm just going to spend a little bit more time doing this. And you tend to kind of overdo it, in that area because you're like, I don't know when I'm going to get a chunk of time like this again. So what I had heard from this organizing expert is when you have blocks set up and you're like, this is my work block, this is my personal block, this is, anything like that, however you want to break it up. It's knowing that you're going to have that time again, and when it's coming, that is the game changer, because then it's like you can kind of let that come off of your mind, and you're like, okay, all right, I can stop here because I know tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'm going to be able to pick this back up. I have that set in stone. I am going to stick with that. So it's okay. I can set it down for now because I have a dedicated time and space to be able to do this tomorrow.
Yeah. It can be hard to be disciplined. I mean, like you said, a lot of people know about the idea of time blocking. The question is, first of all, do they actually make the effort, take the time to come up with a schedule of sorts that works for them, number one. But then two, do they actually do that thing consistently? And I realize like stuff comes up. We're not always going to be perfect with our schedule, but 90% of the time, because if we do that thing consistently, then we're easily going to be able to get the work done that we need to. If we're intentional about creating the right schedule and then we follow through consistently, it's the like, oh man, I need to do a time block schedule. I listened to the Boca podcast and Kate told me about this thing. And so they go and do it for 2 weeks and then they fall off the wagon and then you lose the effectiveness of it. And then in some cases, I think the subconscious kind of assumption is, oh, that didn't really work. What didn't work is that we didn't follow through on the thing consistently. And I've realized more and more, being in business for myself now for 20 plus years, that it's the little things done consistently that ultimately help us get further in business. It's not about doing having the big fancy workflow and showing up and doing that for 2 weeks at a time. It's about doing the small things consistently, and time blocking certainly is one of those things. Do you have any recommendations as to how listeners can maybe carry out that idea of time blocking more consistently?
Well, in that same from that same organizing expert, I remember her saying, you have to build a schedule that you love. Like, it shouldn't be like, I should be doing it at this time. And, it becomes like this robotic thing. It's like, you should be building a schedule that you're actually excited about for the day. Like, thinking ahead, like when you look at it, is it like, okay, this feels really good because I know I've given myself enough time to do the things that I need to do, or maybe I don't really want to do, but I have to get done, right? But then I also have things built in that I can look forward to. Have I built in, time with friends later in the evening or later in the week? Have I built in, some time for myself, some quiet time, building enough rest? But for me, especially, it's giving yourself grace. Because like you said, you might get really excited about it for a little while. And I tend to be like this. I'll get really excited about something for a little bit. I'll stick with it for a little bit. But then something happens. One of my kids gets sick, or, we have, something that comes up. And it's just, it throws everything out of whack. And it's giving yourself that grace to kind of like say, all right, I got off track. I can do this again, and pulling yourself back on and saying, I can do this again. Let me give it another shot. And allowing yourself to understand that you are going to mess it up. You're going to, have some times where it's not going to go perfectly, but that's okay. And you can try again.
Fair enough. I like that. Okay. So we're talking about time management. Let's get into, I think, one of the most incredible elements of time management, time savings as a business owner, and that's delegation. And obviously I own an editing company, photographers edit, so it's natural that I talk about this. But I also, because I've run that company now for 15 years or so, I understand how much time not only delegating editing can save, but delegating administrative tasks, album design, accounting, and of course the list goes on even into our personal lives, what we can delegate for the sake of creating a bit of space for ourselves, having a better balance like we were talking about. Is this a concept that you've applied in your business? Have you seen any success in it? What's that been like for you?
Mm-hmm. I will admit to you, I tend to be one of those people like, if you want it done right, you do it yourself, which is not a good thing when you're a business owner. It's not a good thing when you're running a household with many people in it. You do have to give up some of that control. You have to be willing to, okay, someone else can do it just as well as I can. It's all right. But really understanding, especially when I understood what my time is worth, and if the task that I'm doing, if it produces less than when I charge hourly, and obviously we're talking from a work perspective, right? But if you can even take this into personal, actually, for people, I know sometimes people feel guilty about having someone to clean their home or to outsource, any financial tasks, things like that, even on a personal level. But the thing is, if the time saved is significant enough that it would allow you to do something that would be of higher value, either in your time dedication, whether that's now freeing you up to have more time with your family, or perhaps allows you to be able to take on a client that otherwise you were spending a lot of time editing or trying to figure out a lot of different things from the inside the business point. When you realize how much your time is worth, I think that makes it a little bit easier to switch off of that and to say, okay, I can hire somebody at this rate, which is still, it should be a fair rate, but they're able to do this and accomplish it, and now I'm able to do something that has a higher value, whether that's monetary or a personal value to you.
I think, and I think that's actually a really great point. I think a lot of times, and I've heard this even in the podcast from guests on this show, that the tendency is to go the direction, do the things that they quote unquote like to do, and then delegate the rest. And instead, I think the focus should be what you just suggested, which is what is of higher value that you need to actually be focusing your time on. Because if we're using the logic of I'm going to do the things that I like to watch Netflix. Does that mean I'm going to go watch Netflix for 5 hours because that's what I like to do? Like that kind of logic, I don't think really adds up in the end if we're trying to build a business that's going to scale and be sustainable over time. So I like that approach that you're suggesting, which is focus on the things that actually add value, that drive the bottom line at the end of the day for you as a business owner. And then those things that we can delegate to somebody else so that we have the freedom to focus on the things that create more value. We can probably do that with 90% of what actually goes on in a business day to day. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to set our ego aside and give up a bit of control like you were talking about. But at the end of the day, we need to focus on the stuff that brings the most value and whatever the scenario is that we're focusing on at that moment. So I love that. I think that's really, really good. Okay, it's tempting to park there because I have more questions there's more to talk about as it relates to this topic, but we'll keep going because I really want to get to this conversation about copy, website copy. For anybody else listening in who has not used Photographer's Edit, I'm just going to throw this out here. photographersedit.com, book a podcast is the code that you can use to get 40% off your first order at photographersedit.com. Make sure you take advantage of that and save a little bit of time during this busy season coming up. I used to shoot, Kate, 40 weddings a year. The post-production from that is just, it's mind-boggling, and it just drove me insane. I had to find a solution myself, and so I ended up creating one, but I hope photographers listening will take advantage of that. Speaking of, we have a number of you streaming with us. Don't hesitate to ask questions, comment. You can send us funny emojis if you'd like to, as Kate and I are having this conversation about how to book clients more effectively using website copy. One more question for you before we get to that main topic, Kate, and that is a favorite self-help book or business book that you would recommend to our business owners, photographers listening in?
So from a business perspective, I love to read personal development books. I'm actually a big fan of John Acuff, both the start and finish books that he's written. Those are great. But and that does help a lot with the business side of things as well. But in terms of my particular craft with writing and marketing, I am a huge fan of Donald Miller. So the Building a StoryBrand book is absolutely worth a read. I actually prefer the audio version because he speaks. It's him that reads it, and to hear his inflection and the way that the emphasis that he puts on certain topics, I really enjoy reading that. It's definitely one that I read at least once a year, sometimes multiple times a year, because it just helps me as a marketing professional, as a writing professional, to stay sharp and to remember how to translate this over to our wedding business owners that we work with, because that's where I feel like my superpower is I understand marketing and writing concepts and what really moves businesses forward, what really connects them at a deep level with their clients, but I know how to put that into examples and terms and ways that make sense for the wedding industry and in general for people who have more of a service industry focus as well.
Yeah, well, and as you were talking, I actually pulled that up on Amazon. I'll do it again here. And it's funny because, Donald, and I agree with you, first of all, Kate, this is one of the most practical, most applicable marketing books out there. Whereas a lot of business books have kind of that 80-20, 80% fluff, 20% actionable information. Donald's book is kind of the flip-flop of that, and it's a super easy read, or an audio listen as well. And for anybody who's actually streaming with us, you'll see on screen, I've just purchased this book, the actual physical copy, or maybe a Kindle version, 10 times to give as gifts to people, probably another 10 times at least, maybe more for the audio version to give as gifts to people, because it really is a super powerful book. The other ones that you mentioned were John Acuff, and I'm going to pull this up real quick. I think the first one is that's on the list here, Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Done, and then the other is Start, Punch Fear in the Face, Escape Average, Do Work That Matters. Are those the two?
Those are the ones, yes.
Okay,
And
cool.
what I love about him is he has, I think his brain works similarly to mine. It can be very bright and shiny, very exciting to, I love content creation is actually one of my favorite things in the world, because it's like I love coming up with ideas, new things all the time, right? And so I think he works very much the same way. He is also a writer. And so to be able to distill and kind of encourage you, like, okay, first of all, make sure you are not allowing only ideas to drive your business efforts. Make sure you have a strategy, move forward correctly, right? But then making sure you're finishing those projects, because it's so tempting to focus on the excitement of starting a new project, and then when you get to the end, which tends to sometimes be tedious, wrapping up loose ends and things like that. He has some wonderful recommendations in that book in particular about how to make sure that you are staying the course, not getting too distracted by new ideas, but also not letting that passion, escape, not getting so focused and, robotic, as you kind of mentioned earlier, that you're able to do what's needed, but still have a passion for what you do.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna link to all of those books, all 3 books, in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com. And you all make sure you take advantage of that resource. Those of you listening in, bokehpodcast.com, show notes are created for each and every episode, actually, links to resources, including these. So check those out. All right, Kate. So we're going to get into the topic here, how to book clients faster with better website copy. And let's start with a question. You've kind of alluded to this. I think we both did earlier in the conversation, but I've had this kind of hunch for a while now that there is a bit too much focus on portfolio, the so-called quality of images or the style of images as it relates to building out a photography website. The emphasis put on that for the sake of booking potential clients versus maybe focusing on a little bit more on the value proposition, communication of value proposition to a potential client. And I'm curious your take on this. What do you think should be that, I guess, the balance, the ratio of focus on actual photos for a portfolio versus more creative, not even creative, more effective copy for the sake of converting clients more effectively?
Yeah, no, first, I completely agree. Yes, you need to showcase your work so that your clients understand what you have to offer. They can get a good example of it. And visuals are definitely important to couples, but you need to connect with them on an emotional level. And images can only take you so far in that regard. So a picture might be worth 1,000 words, but your clients need 10,000 words to buy from you. that's just an estimate. But basically what I mean by that is that, as you mentioned, there tends to be sometimes, I think, especially from photographers, a reliance on the image simply because that is your work. That is what speaks a lot of times for your quality, for your art, for your artistic level, right? But your clients need to understand that while they want to see the images, they also need to understand how you're going to make this experience real for them. Like, you brought this scenario, this beautiful image to life for these people, but how are you going to do that for me? How am I going to know that you could, this wasn't just a flash in the pan or just a luckily timed, shot or something,
Right,
and that
right.
there's actual skill and art behind it, right?
Well, and I would actually take it a step further and say even more than the so-called skill in art, which 95% of our clients can actually even, or probably can't even relate to it on any nuanced level, right? Photographers put so much emphasis on style and post-production. And of course, owning an editing company, I've seen this over and over, heard this over and over again, but photographers care about that, like the 3 points on a slider in Lightroom, and the end client just doesn't. And so now we're doing it for ourselves, and as a result, we're wasting a lot of time and effort and energy because it has nothing to do whatsoever with booking a client. It has everything to do with our ego or how we're trying to impress another photographer. And that may sound a little bit blunt, but at the end of the day, we're running a photography business. And so we need to be thinking like a client, not thinking like a photographer. And we have to learn to make that distinction. But I want to use this as a segue to my next question. And you alluded to something, which is we've got to speak to the emotions of the client. I saw this happen in the last 20 years. Being a photographer, when I first started, it was more commonplace, at least in the market that I was in at the time, Chattanooga, Tennessee, where the average wedding photographer, a good photo was like a bride and groom stiff and posed and fake smile and shooting with medium format film, and the idea of photojournalism was not commonplace, and it was old white men that were kind of leading the photography industry. And we've changed a lot. We've gone from that to more free-flowing journalistic style photography, some fashion-oriented as well. Photographers are making more of an effort to develop personal relationships with their clients in some form or fashion. But to support that effort, they've spent a lot of time talking about themselves. And the idea is, if I talk about myself and what I like and the things that I like to do and how I spend my time, then I'm going to be able to make that so-called emotional connection that you talked about, Kate. What I would venture, my hunch is that what you're actually talking about is speaking to the emotional needs of that potential client. That's what we're talking about. And yet photographers are just talking about themselves endlessly. When you go to their, the front of their website or go to their bio, the About Me section, and it's a little bit exhausting. And also at the end of the day, how effective is that in actually converting a potential client? So again, similar to this question about the emphasis on portfolio versus effective copy, where we're speaking to needs and desires of potential clients, what would you say the ratio should be of talking about a photographer's self, which I realize we shouldn't throw out altogether, talking about ourselves as photographers versus, again, speaking to the needs and desires of potential clients?
Well, a ratio, and I hope this won't offend anybody. I really believe it should be 90% focused on your clients and 10% focused on you. And that 10% really should be in the About Me section at the bottom of your homepage or in a separate page altogether. And the reason why I say that is because when your clients are coming to you, first of all, you may be one of 50 other photographers that they've looked at, right? And so if you're on there and you're using all this beautiful language, you're talking about like you capture beautiful photographs and your editing style. And as you kind of mentioned earlier, a lot of times photographers will even like mention like the equipment they use and things like that. And it's like, they don't know about this, okay? They don't know what that means. They don't understand how that's going to help them get their
right.
images that they ultimately want, right? But this is how you have to be focused on their needs, okay? It needs to be showing them how you stand apart, but that's not going to matter in terms of who you are. The way that you're going to stand apart is by saying, hey, I know what it is that you really want. I know this is the end product that you want. I know this is the end result that you want, and this is how I'm going to help you get it. And whenever clients come to us, like I said, they may have looked at 50 other photographers, depending on whatever event that it is that they're looking to have photographed. And if we are not showing them that we care about them, because they're coming to us with a what's in it for me mentality. They're coming at it from a perspective of, okay, what can you do for me? How are you different? What are you going to do? Are you going to be able to answer this and do this for me? And we're not going to be able to do that if we're talking about how every Wednesday we love to take our golden retriever for a walk with our caramel lattes. And it's like, it just doesn't. I get really passionate about this. I actually have an episode on our podcast where I talk about like building an avatar. We have seen some incredibly detailed avatars, which are great for running ads. It's great for understanding like the demographics and things that you need from like a more technical standpoint. But we have seen photographers and videographers who will, literally at one point it was a 10-page front and back like foray into who their avatar was, what they do on a daily basis, what their childhood was like, what their hopes and dreams are for the future. And I'm like, but what about your client?
Yeah, this is not a therapy session for you, the photographer.
What does this matter?
Yeah.
We have to be able to show them that we understand what they value. Because when we show them and we can tell them, not just in our pictures, but telling them in words that we know what it is that we value, that makes us valuable to them.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I just saw a Friends episode. Do you watch Friends, or have you watched Friends?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I just saw a Friends episode, and I don't remember the exact name of the episode, but in this particular episode, Joey's trying to figure out how to give a gift, like a really great gift, to his girlfriend.
Yes.
I think it's her birthday.
Yes.
And at one point, his idea of a gift for this new girlfriend, this girl that he's dating, is a pen with a clock on it. And he just thought that was the coolest idea, right? But I think, and it's a funny episode, but I think it also brilliantly represents what's going on in the photography industry a lot of time, which is that photographers are thinking like photographers. They're thinking about themselves. They're thinking about what they like. They're thinking about, even if they're not conscious of it, what other photographers like. And that's actually what their efforts reflect. They're not actually getting to know the person or the people that they're wanting to connect with, and then learning to speak their language and learning to speak to their needs and desires. And that's what we actually need to do. Otherwise, we're going to be Joey with a pen that has a clock on it. And we can laugh at it, but unfortunately, that's happening over and over and over again. So it very likely, in the case where photographers are talking about themselves endlessly, or they're just, everything's about the photos, but nothing communicates to the potential needs and desires of the client. So to that end, I'm curious, and you mentioned to me ahead of time, you've got a few specific ways that photographers can learn to speak the language of their potential client. Will you share those with our audience?
Yeah, so with your website, you really need to make sure, and you're talking about the copy in particular, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when it comes to the copy, we really need to understand, as we alluded to earlier, you need to understand their emotional needs. And the best way that I can say that in a more clear way is understanding what is their why behind wanting these pictures, okay? Is it that they want to connect with family, if they're doing a family session, or even with a wedding, are they looking to have these pictures show and create a connection with family? Do they want artistic value out of this? Knowing what you're capturing, with your style and everything, and knowing what it is that they ultimately want, that is what needs to drive your content. And then the images have to work together with that. So we can't really have, these extremely detailed pictures, or like ones where, we're really focusing on the rings next to the bouquet and the shoes and everything. Beautiful artistic photos. But is that what your couples want? And I'm using wedding examples because that's our business focus. But with anything that, as it relates to your artistic or your photography style, we need to make sure is what is it that they ultimately want out of this? And I know that your last guest, she was talking a lot about understanding how they want to ultimately use these photographs, right? How they're to be displayed, what they want to see,
Sure.
all those kinds of things. So we need to show that on our website, but we also then need to use the words and have them connect. Because if we're saying, we know that you want this, and this is how we accomplish this, but you have a picture that's a complete departure from it, or so different simply because you happen to like it and you feel it's a great showcase of your talents, we're not going to make that emotional connection. It's going to be a disconnect, and they're going to find somebody else.
Okay, so if we are going to then write more effective copy, we have to learn to understand the needs of the potential clients. And it
Yes.
begins, number one, then with understanding the motivation behind their desire, in this case, to purchase photographic services. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think about, I guess, a very basic business concept is that if a business is to succeed, it effectively solves a problem or provides for a desire that someone has. And in the case of wedding photography, I guess we could say that it's a combination of those things, right? I don't know if you'd even call it a problem. They have a wedding coming up. That's a good thing. They need a wedding photographer, also a good thing. So this is more of a desire that we're meeting. They want a particular photographer. I guess maybe the so-called problem, or the issue that we're solving, is the nuance associated with that. So they want a wedding photographer, but they want a particular type of wedding photographer who has this list of services to go along with their brand. And if we know that potential client wants those things, then we need to be able to effectively communicate what our brand represents specifically, the services that we provide, the way in which we do that. And that's where we're ultimately able to meet those desires or needs more effectively.
Okay, so first, actually, I would say they do have a problem. They do have a problem.
Okay.
They need photographs of their wedding day, and they have one shot at it.
Oh,
They have
interesting.
one way to
Okay.
do this. And this is why I think, especially when it comes to wedding photography, and again, this can be translated to, senior photographs, family issues. There's a lot of different things you can turn this into, but focusing specifically on wedding photography for this example, they have one shot to get this right. And this is why couples, we have to make it so clear that we understand what it is that they ultimately want. And it actually is not our photographs. It's not the photographs that you're producing. It is either the feelings that those photographs will then, when they have them back, that they will produce in them and the people they love and care for, but also feeling like they got this right, feeling like they're not going to have regret over it because it didn't meet whatever their particular need was. And if I can give an example, so we have photography clients that we've worked with. They are Chicago-based. They're a couple. And they really were just starting out, and they had a beautiful style, but they really weren't sure how to describe it and how to connect. Like, they were photographing weddings, which is what they ultimately wanted to do, but it was in front of barns and stuff like that, and they're like, that's not what we want to do, and it's not what our couples really want. It's just they were kind of doing that because they weren't really sure. So when we dug down, and the way that you do that is you keep asking, why do they want that? What does that mean for them? How is that going to make them feel when it's all said and done, right? You just keep going down layer by layer by layer. And when we really got down to it, they said, well, our couples want for their friends to walk into their house and see their pictures and be like, oh my gosh, this should be in a gallery somewhere. This is amazing. Where did you get these done? That is what their couples want. They don't want a picture. They don't even want like detailed pictures of, like I said, it's kind of a cliche, I guess, but the ring and the shoes and the bouquet, right? Nor do they want even like things where it's like a candid moment captured or anything like that. They want things where it's like, it's high art, it's gallery worthy, it's artistic. So when we worked together, that was the statement that I helped them to create, is that they are artistic wedding photographers. That this is what they do, because first of all, that catches people attention. We're not using, soft focus or anything that, again, is very, photography, industry focused, right?
Sure,
it's
sure.
not something we would say to each other, but it's something that they would say, yeah, I want my wedding photos to be artistic. And I think sometimes, especially with photography, because this tends to be a passion for a lot of people, it is an art form, it is an expression of their talent and creativity. I think sometimes we feel like we're being too basic if we use words like that. It's like artistic, well, want, it's like, like, is that really like, that doesn't speak to the ethereal nature and everything like that. It's like, no, especially when they first come into your website, you need to come out the gate strong and clear with what it is that you can give them based on what you know that they want. Because if we don't do that, we have 6 seconds to get people to decide whether or not they want to stay on our website or not. 6 seconds, that's it. They actually form an opinion of your business in less than a second. I think it's like 0.6 seconds, 0.5 seconds for them to decide whether or not they, what their opinion of you is. But 6 seconds for them to decide if they want to scroll down, if they want to hit that contact, book a consultation button. We have to come out of the gate strong and clear with saying exactly what it is that we know that they want, showing an image or images that are backing that up, and then saying in very clear and basic language, not, treating them as if they're stupid or anything like that, but just very clear, not, high level or industry term, but real person talk, like you were saying earlier.
Sure.
We have to do this right away or we're going to lose them.
Okay, so we're going to come back to like the practical application, how to actually write write more effective copy for the site here in just a second. I want to get back to how we even get to know the client's desires, needs first before we get to that. So I'm taking notes here, old school. So I got a notebook I'm just referencing, but this first step is to learn to understand the why behind, the motivation behind why this person's even coming to my website looking for photography, so that I can more effectively speak to those needs and those desires. You mentioned that there are kind of 3 specific ways that we can develop this clear understanding. So what's the second one?
Second one is that you don't stop at your first answer.
Okay.
So really, we might say like, okay, what is it? And the way that we start to figure this out is, okay, we say, what is it that they ultimately want? That's the first step, right? Is what is it that they ultimately want? And you might say things like, they want beautiful pictures. Okay, but what does beautiful mean to them? Does that mean, are they looking for something with kind of a soft feel? Are they looking for something that is grand and artistic? What does beautiful mean to your particular clients, okay? And another, pushback that we sometimes get from photographers or other wedding pros is, well, I serve a lot of different kinds of clients, so how can I say one thing or the other?
Right.
There's always going to be a connecting thread. So there's going to be some sort of, and this is again at a heart level, at an emotional level, that it is that they ultimately want. Because if you go back and you think about clients that you've worked with, and if you're just starting out in the business, then think about the clients you want to work with. What is it that they all tend to have in common? And it can be different things. Like I said, either they want an artistic focus, they want where it feels like it's showing connections between family, or there's going to be some connecting thread that you'll be able to find. So you have to ask yourself the question first, but then the second step is you keep going down further why. Like I was mentioning, asking like, well, what does that mean to them? Why is that? How are they going to get to that? And you're just going to keep going further and further down, and eventually you're going to get to a point where you're going to feel it in your gut. Like you're going to be like, that's it. Like, and it's, if you're not quite there yet, if you don't have that feeling, it means you need to go further. And just
Okay.
keep asking yourself those why questions, because I really do believe that we know what our couples want. We know what our clients want, but we just can't always find the words to express it. So we have to keep challenging ourselves to go further down.
Yeah, and they can give us those words literally. I
Absolutely.
want to come back to that actually, because I'm curious as to how we go about having these conversations to learn these things. But let's go ahead and get to that third point. What's that third step to better understanding what our clients need and want?
You just said it. It's going back through past reviews, even emails, direct messages, but looking for emotional words or stories that your clients told, okay? Because sometimes, if they leave a review, they might say, oh, I loved my pictures and everything. It's like, yeah, okay, that's a generic statement. Hopefully they love the pictures, right? But what is it that they were surprised? Like, you need to start looking for like emotional, like stories almost that they're telling, okay? What were they surprised that you caught, like a moment, okay? What do other people tell them about their pictures when they see them? How do these things make them feel? Even if they don't outright say it, how do you think it made them feel when they tell you some of these things, like, this person said something about my pictures, or I felt this way on my wedding day? Think about, again, what emotion is that bringing out? And it might, at first, like I said, seem a little obvious, but if you keep digging a little bit more, so if they're like, oh my gosh, I love my pictures, I love having them on the wall and everything. Okay, well, what does that mean? Let's go to deeper level. I love seeing them every time I walk into my home. Well, what does that mean? It means that it's creating, these pictures create an emotional connection, but you have to think for your particular style. How was that done? How did you do that? Was it because you were showing, this really special moment between the couple or between their family members? Was it because it has that artistic value? Is it because other people came into their house and they want people to be impressed with the artwork that they're seeing? Or like, oh, look at how sweet that picture is. Oh, that's so wonderful that you got that moment. There's always going to be a reason behind that, an emotion behind it. So the best thing you can do is look for those things first. And like you said, if possible, use their exact words, because if they're saying it, it is very likely that your other clients are going to say something, if not the same thing, something very, very similar. And that's how we start to connect, how we start to make that connection with our clients, because now we're saying their words back to them. And it's really cool, because if you get this right, you will have people say it back to you. We've had our clients who've told us this. We've worked with them. They put it on their website. They're like, I was just in a sales call and they said exactly what's on my homepage. That's what they said they wanted. And it's like, it's not they had the website up or anything. It means that you're connecting with them at a deep level. You're giving them what they want.
Okay, well, let's just use this then as an opportunity to transition into the practical application. We talked about how we can establish some level of understanding of our potential clients' needs and desires so that we can speak to them very specifically. What does that actually look like practically when it comes to writing copy for the homepage of our website?
So when you're writing your web copy, there are really three important things that you need to clearly say. And like I said, right away, because we only have a few seconds to grab their attention and keep them focused on us and want to learn more about us. But you need to clearly say what it is that they want, which is their emotional need. We need to tell them how you can deliver on that thing for them, okay? And this is where you can talk about a little bit of your preferred style or method, but you have to always remember to bring it back to what does that mean for them? How is that going to give them what they want? And a lot of times we can do that by using so that statements. I know that you want this, so I shoot in, I do lightly posed photography so that you feel comfortable in front of the camera. Just bringing it back to them and what it is that they want. But then the third thing is that we have to tell them the emotional end result that they're going to get when they choose you, okay? And that means painting a picture with words of how they're going to feel when they're sharing their wedding album with their grandchildren, when they are having their guests are lingering over a framed photo at their next party, okay? Whatever it is that they want after their photography session has ended, after it's long over, right? We need to clearly say how it is that they're going to feel when they've achieved that, because essentially you're taking them through a journey, right? They're coming to you because they do have a problem, whatever it may be. If it's their wedding, like I said, it's their one shot at this. If it's a senior, it's like this is their last year of high school. You want to capture this moment in time. It's a family reunion. Well, it's going to be really hard to bring everybody back together, right? There's many different reasons for that, but it's like you have to say what it is that their problem, the thing that they're struggling with finding, and then saying that at an emotional level. Then second step is making sure that you are showing them how you're going to accomplish that. And not in industry terms, but saying how the way that you photograph or your style and the way that you work with your clients, even how that is going to help them achieve what it is that they ultimately want.
Okay.
And then that third step is very clearly saying that emotional need, how they're going to feel when it's all said and done. They've got those photographs. How are they going to feel when it's long over?
I was actually, as you were talking, I jumped over to the website. So for everybody listening in, I'm going to actually pull this up really quick. So everybody listening in, if you go to bookmorebrides.com, you can see this on the homepage. I scroll down a little bit, and there's a statement. One of the headings says, "Stop stressing about leads and get back to doing what you love in your wedding business." As I'm looking at this outline, number one, we need to actually speak to what it is that they want. I want to get back to doing what I love in my wedding business. And I realize that statement there is a little bit general, but it's playing to that idea. Number two, how you can deliver on that desire. And then number three, emotional end result. So you don't have to keep stressing about the leads or about getting those leads. We're going to help you do that, get those leads so that you don't have to continue to stress, and you could actually get back to doing what you love in your wedding business, which is the photography, or which is working with the clients, or some combination of the above. But do you have any other, I guess, practical examples that we can share with our listeners, whether on this site or maybe you can just share some out loud, what statements like this, what this copy would actually sound like? Because again, photographers are so used to writing copy that sounds cute and fun and creative, and they're used to talking about, like you said, themselves drinking lattes and hanging out with their, with their dog or their partner or whoever it is. But they're not used to this very simple, direct, practical copy, and it doesn't necessarily sound creative, but that's not the point. So what does it look like? What does it sound like?
Absolutely. Well, actually, I do have a framework that I teach our clients inside of our programs, where it is a very clear framework of exactly what your clients need to see. And again, this is tested. We have done this for several years now with our students, and this is where you start to get those responses where those couples are saying things back to you, or those clients are like repeating back essentially what is on your website. There really is a framework to be able to say things and show things in the right place and saying it in the right way so that you can make that connection with them. But it's also making sure that you're having a balance, okay? It's making sure you're focused on them 100% and what it is that they're, 90%, like we said, that percentage, that ratio earlier. It's making sure that you are showing what is important to them, what it is that their ultimate needs are, going through the kind of the three-step process I mentioned earlier, but then showing them that you know how to make that come to life. And when you have all these things lined up, what it's going to do is it's going to take the stress off of them, because when your clients come to you, you are an unknown quantity to them. Even if you were referred out by a friend or someone that they care about, they don't really know you yet. They don't really know your style. And ultimately what that boils down to is they don't know if they can trust you. They don't know if they can trust you with this important moment in their life that they're willing to spend the money and the time to have it professionally photographed. So we need to build that trust with them. And the way that we do that is by saying and showing them what it is that we know that they want, taking the time to get to understand that, and then clearly saying it and showing it on our website. Because when we do that, then we're going to be able to show them, like, they kind of like start to lower their guard a little bit. They're like, okay, I'm feeling like they know what I want. They're getting me. They see what it is. But then understanding that you know how to make that happen. You know how to bring that to life for them. And the thing is, when you do this, when you put in this work, you have this correct framework in place, and you're saying the right things when you know you've got it correct from an emotional level, your clients are going to come to you pre-sold in your sales conversation, because you've already answered, when you follow this framework, you've already answered like 3/4 of the questions that they would have otherwise brought to a sales conversation.
Yeah.
You've already done that. You've taken that stress and that worry off of them. So now when they come to you, they're like, okay, this person's really good. I love what they do. They know what I want. Now I just need to ask a few personal questions that, they couldn't, you can't, answer, what it is that they personally uniquely want in their situation. But that's what the sales call is for. And that's how you do that. But it takes away all of that stress, and you feeling like, especially in a sales conversation, I apologize, a little bit of a sidestep, but we find a lot of our wedding pros come to the sales call, and they spend like the first 10, 20, 30 minutes talking about like all their credentials, their certifications, how they're really good at this and how many people have worked with them. And when you're doing that, all you're doing is kind of reinforcing with these couples that it's like, you have to prove your worth. Like let me tell you how amazing and professional I am. When you've done that on the front end with your website, you don't have to worry about that. Now, when you get into that sales conversation, you're able to be fully present with your clients, talking about what it is that they personally and uniquely need, and making sure that you are giving them that unique solution that they want.
Sure. So I understand the framework. We're going to speak to what they want, how you can deliver on that desire, and then the emotional end result. But I'm curious if you can share a practical example, because the one that I pulled up on your website kind of halfway went there, but I'd love to be able to share, whether through a website or maybe you could just speak it out loud, some practical example of what that copy would sound like.
Absolutely. Let me recommend our the photography clients I mentioned earlier. It's called 8handsphotography.com. If you go to that, it'll give you a really great example of how we pull this all together, because they have a really amazing main image that really shows, and they've made it their own. They've customized this, and as they've gotten to know their clients better, because now they've really grown. I talk about them all the time because I'm just so proud of them. When they were starting off, they knew they wanted to do this full time. They were just starting off in their business. They were both in full-time jobs with 2 small kids. She has now left her business, or left her full-time job. She is doing this full-time. I think he's not far behind. And so to see their growth has been so encouraging. But if you go, so here, let me see. I'm not sure if that one, nope, that's more about them. But do you see how this wasn't at the front here? See, it says growing up in Chicago, and talks about them. That wasn't at the front. That wasn't at the top of the website.
Yeah, so I'm going up to the top here. So talk to me about where I can find that copy.
Yes. So first we have here the Artistic Chicago Wedding Photographers. I call this the headliner statement. Okay. This is where you have to come out strong with the words, because we've got the image here. Beautiful. It's like, oh, wow, I love that. But Artistic Chicago Wedding Photographers. Now we're echoing in words what the image is showing us. So if you scroll down just a tiny bit, the come on in part right here. Okay. Your love isn't ordinary. Your wedding photos shouldn't be either. This is and in essence, we worked with them together to create this statement, because this is in essence what it is that their couples want. They do not want cookie cutter wedding photos. They don't want things where it's them posed, where their hands are together and, like you were saying earlier, where it's very stiff and everything like that. Or even ones where they're like by Chicago landmarks or something like that. It's like, no. They're saying your love isn't ordinary. You are a couple who wants more, and your love is so unique. So shouldn't your wedding photos reflect that? And then underneath that, it goes a little more in depth and detail into how they bring that to life for them. So they've come out strong saying who it is that they are, who it is that they like to serve, the style that they have, but then also saying, hey, you are a unique couple. We know you want unique wedding photographs. That's what we're going to give to you, and here's how we're going to do it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that framework is really simple and straightforward and direct, and I think will help kind of maybe minimize the fluff too for photographers if they actually follow that. They're specifically speaking to what that potential client wants. They then share, and this can all be done in a phrase or a line each, so it doesn't have to take a lot of copy either. How can that desire be delivered on through the service that you're offering? And then speak to the emotional end result as a result of buying in. That person's like, oh, I want to feel this particular way. They're saying they can deliver on this. Sold. I'm in. That's kind of the idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because now you've made that connection with them. You're showing them that you understand what it is that they need. You're showing them that you can deliver on it. You're showing them that you know that they want to feel like this. So this is what you're focused on. You are laser focused on giving them their end result and how they want to feel at the end of the day with your photographs. And like you said, it doesn't mean this has to be a book. Now, it does need to be slightly balanced, because especially as we talked about, I think a little earlier with photographers, the websites do tend to be very image heavy. And while typically you would have a little bit more in photographs simply to showcase your style and your work, you don't want to go too far on either side. And similarly, when we work with other wedding professionals who may not have the photographs, well, we can't make it all copy then either, can we? We have to make sure these are working together, that they're echoing each other. But it doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have to be this massive description of what it is they want and everything. It's being clear, it's being succinct, and getting right to the heart of the matter. And sometimes the most simple and basic ways of saying and setting up things, whether that's your website copy, your emails that you're writing, your social media strategy, whatever it is, often simple is the best. Don't get too fancy. Don't get too in the weeds or trying to follow too many trends or anything like that, because that tends to get us focused off of the heart of things. And that's connecting with your clients, helping them to know that you can give them what it is that they ultimately want, because they have a lot to choose from. They have a lot of options, and we have to show, this is how we show that we're different. It's how we stand out from our competition, because very likely your competition isn't doing this work. They're not taking the time to say and show what is of value to their clients. They're doing the fluffy copy, or they're doing all photographs and not making that connection. So when you can do that, now you're standing out. You are showing that you are different, that you have a deeper understanding of them and what it is that they want. And that's going to elevate you in their mind and truly demonstrate your value.
Well, Kate, I appreciate you making time to share with our listeners, I think, again, what is a very practical, applicable outline and structure for writing more effective copy for the site. I know this is a pretty extensive process that we can't necessarily cover in complete detail during an hour podcast. So if you will just briefly share a little bit about the service that you offer, the consulting services you offer to wedding professionals to be able to do this.
Absolutely. We have a membership program. We also have a group coaching program where we can really go in depth. And we also have some done-for-you services, a CRM, and a few other options that are available really to be customized for whatever your needs might be and where you want to go. So everything is available on bookmorebrides.com, or if you can find us on Instagram, everything is Book More Brides. Pretty easy to find. We'd love to connect.
Perfect. Yeah, and I just popped that up there on the screen. And for anybody listening in, of course, we'll link to all these resources in the show notes at bookapodcast.com. Thanks again, Kate, for making time for all of us and for sharing both your experience and your expertise today as well.